Well, now that's confirmed. Let's party, shall we?
Let's go back to history.
Not sure you're ready, Harleen.
But Max, it's so much fun.
Begin.
What are you doing in there?
Checking the progress of our newest recruit. He'll be ready for a face before long. He's loyal.
Loyal. You know, I remember when you first came to me, Gaia. Daughter of a failed general. I thought to myself, what kind of coward sends his daughter to do what he wouldn't? But you know, then I realized that kind of coward just doesn't have it in him. Our man on the inside located Brogan. Let's go then.
You're wasting your time. I'll never talk to you.
Well, that's very brave. But everyone talks when their blood starts to cook at 160 degrees centigrade. It's a biochemical imperative. The smart ones start talking earlier than that. You a smart one? Right, no, didn't think so.
Go ahead. Put it in my arm. I don't care.
Tell me the location of Gravik's compound.
I swear! I know nothing, please!
I'm afraid, sorry, dear heart, I can't work with nothing. I need to know where Gravik is and where he'll be.
I don't know, I swear. Gravik keeps everything a secret.
And what secrets doesn't he keep?
He's building a machine.
What kind of machine?
I think it's to make us stronger.
You wait in the car. Keep the engine running.
Who's helping you?
I don't know what you mean.
Who's leading the science?
Some married couple.
What's their name?
I can't, please. Gravik will kill me.
Well, I'm terribly sorry, but if I don't get a name, Gravik won't get a chance to kill you.
Please. Dalton. The name's Dalton.
Oh, you see, that wasn't so terribly difficult, was it?
Принеси мне колбасы, давай, иди! Быстрее!
This Holly's all wrapped up.
Sounds like your lift is here.
Listen, I'm just gonna go and check round back.
I'll come with.
No, you stay here, they might come out with Brogan.
Smart lady, Gaia.
Dostoevsky.
Kiedy zobaczył Swift na zaproszenie. No gwilady za pracę po zabójstwie.
Harley Quinn wins.
I got him. Let's go. What'd you tell him?
Nothing, just lies.
Nothing. Just lies.
That's all I swear.
Take him to the car.
Begin.
Keep driving.
How did they find our safe house?
Pull over.
Did we make it home, Peyton?
Almost there, bro.
Wait, hold on, I missed it. What did that dude say? I didn't see that.
Did we make it home, Peyton?
Almost there, bro.
I want to see that. Maria Hill wasn't enough death.
Harley Quinn wins.
Reality is not funny.
Take a joke, pal.
Yeah. Nick Fury.
Aren't you forgetting something?
Harley Quinn wins.
Better.
Almost.
Death. So Nick Fury was just making out.
Meet someone.
He was just making out with an alien. No, not an alien. Well, a Skrull. A Skrull. A Skrull.
Keep it quilted means you keep it the best. 3 layers of plush comfort you can see and feel.
I think it's a wall. I think it's a wall. I think it's a wall.
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Arey, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in episode 2 of Secret Invasion. Alright, so this episode is giving us some crucial background on how the humans went from being the Skrulls' saviors to being their #1 target. And Gravik's backstory makes him fall into the category of sympathetic MCU villain. This episode had lots of reveals and even more questions that I'm going to answer for you right now. We pick up in 1995, the year that Captain Marvel takes place, using the same big font from the last episode that was also used in Black Widow and Captain America Civil War, which is a cool visual indication that these are all part of the spy thriller genre of the MCU, as opposed to the cosmic stories like Guardians or Captain Marvel, which always use a galactic designation to show us where we are at. One very clever thing about this flashback is that it's not just a previously on.
Previously on WandaVision.
They take the time to focus on the Skrull kids that were in the background of Captain Marvel, because those kids are now all grown up and they're inheriting their parents' mistakes. And this seems to be the theme of Marvel Phase 5 so far, with the younger generation taking over for the original heroes. The Guardians are replaced by a new, younger team. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was originally going to end with Scott and Hope stuck in the quantum realm and Cassie looking for a way to get them out. That would have been so much better. Yes, it would have. So after the show recaps all the events that we know, check out our entire Secret Invasion recap for more details, by the way, we go to the year 1997. I'm a little disappointed though that we weren't introduced to the 90s with a sweet 90s jam like this. Now remember, Captain Marvel ended with the Skrulls using a Tesseract-powered engine to fly higher, further, faster so they could escape the Kree and find a new home. Yeah, and care of a space Moses. I remember. But here we learned that I guess that didn't really work out, because the Skrulls are back on Earth after just 2 years. But actually that kind of makes sense, because Earth is a planet where they would be safe from the Kree after Carol decimated Kree warships at the end of Captain Marvel. So the Kree know to leave this planet alone. Oh, okay, hang on, I gotta call here. Oh no, you're urgently trying to reach me about my car warranty? I have a car? Doug, hang it up. But I want a contest, or I owe taxes. It's hard to tell. No, dude, that's a robocall. It means that some online data broker sold your personal information to some company. Oh, that explains why I get calls like that all the time. You ever get calls like that? Nope, not anymore. And I also used to get a ton of spam emails, but then I signed up for Incogni. They're the sponsor of this video. Incogni is by far one of the best products that we talk about on this channel. This is the app that they don't want you to know about. What's it do? Well, have you ever noticed that sometimes you might Google for like car prices and then suddenly you're getting spam calls about a car warranty, or you sign up for some loyalty card and then the robocalls and emails just don't stop? What happens is all of these companies are selling your data to giant firms called data brokers, and then they sell your information to like other advertisers. You would be shocked how much of your personal information is just out there on the internet, like your address and your phone number. Incogni found more than 100 brokers with my information. One of them was rated 9 out of 10 for data sensitivity, and they were selling information about my potential health risks, my insurance provider, and my credit type. It's really scary stuff. Well then, let's go live off the grid and join a cult. No, you don't have to live off the grid and join a cult. But also just don't do that. No, here's the thing. Those data brokers have to remove your name from their database if you ask them to. I don't have time to ask those companies to do all that. I'm just going to go live on a compound somewhere. Nuh-uh, but that's where Incogni comes in. They contact these companies for you. You don't have to do anything, and they alert you when the request has been completed. After signing up, I get almost no spam, and I can't even remember the last time I got a phone call from my old friend unknown number. So I highly recommend giving Incogni a try. Use my code ScreenCrush with the link below to get 60% off of Incogni. It's a great deal that you don't want to miss. Back to the Easter eggs. I thought that the art on the walls here was an interesting design choice. Now, this place was clearly here longer than the scrolls have been, but the mural is of a face split in two, like the scrolls wearing two faces in this scene. This show has a recurring theme of faces appearing in the background, like the clock faces in Sonya's office, the Russian nesting dolls, and the masks hanging up on Fury's wall later in the episode. Fury is now wearing his signature eye patch, whereas the last time we saw him chronologically, he had taped a kitchen utensil to his eye. It's a neat visual way to show how Fury from the end of Captain Marvel is evolving into the man that we met in Iron Man. Now, I can't be sure, but I think that the scroll he speaks to at the beginning is also Priscilla Fury, his wife that we meet at the end of the episode. Wait, what? I have so many questions about this. I know, and I'll explain a bit later on. So, in this opening scene, we meet a young Gravik and find out that he is brilliant, an orphan, and withdrawn.
He escaped from behind enemy lines, piloted the ship all on his own.
It's interesting because this is the origin story for so many superheroes. Hell, even Rocket Raccoon has a similar origin, down to stealing a rocket ship to evade genocide. The origin is also very similar to Superman, who escaped a planetary holocaust in a rocket to find refuge on Earth. But the difference between Gravik and the orphaned heroes like Superman or Batman is that Gravik did not have a strong moral influence to raise him. But Batman didn't have him. Batman had Alfred.
And it also means losing someone that I have cared for since I first heard his cries echo through this house.
Oh yeah, copy that. So in this scene, Fury makes the Skrulls a deal. He'll find them a home, but they have to pay rent by working for S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's a free country, it's not a rent-free country.
This actually explains how S.H.I.E.L.D. could become the preeminent spy agency in the world. And it makes it even more impressive that Hydra was able to stay hidden from Skrull operatives. Seeing young Gravik here also put me in mind of Dumbledore meeting a young Tom Riddle in Harry Potter. Both are villains shaped by tragedy who are recruited by mentor figures that are heroes in the present-day storyline. When Fury greets her, they touch foreheads, like Fury and Talos did in the last episode. Shout out to Heavy Spoilers for pointing out that in Captain Marvel, this gesture is used as a greeting between Skrulls who share a strong personal bond. And then we see Talos in human form. Yeah, why is he still wearing the skin of Fury's boss at S.H.I.E.L.D.? Actually, Doug, he explains this at the end of Captain Marvel.
I love sporting his beautiful blue eyes.
It seems like the Skrulls are similar to the bounty hunters in the movie Critters. Once they find a face they like, they stick with it.
At least days are nothing, Face, till he finds the right self.
This scene confirms a theory that we posted a few days ago that Fury may have promised the Skrulls a home, but in the meantime, he used them as S.H.I.E.L.D. agents.
Very well. You were right, and we were wrong.
Yeah, but wait, didn't you get that episode early? This episode, yeah, but we did write that video before watching episode 2. Oh, okay, alright, I guess I trust you. After Fury recruits the Skrulls, they take human form one at a time to show that they are now on the human side. Notice though that pretty quickly they cut to Fury's reaction. Nice budget saver.
You are very expensive.
And then we go to the terrorist attack on present-day Russia. Shout out to the channel Heavy Spoilers for pointing out that the Russian nesting doll balloons are also indicative of the kind of deception we're seeing in this show. These dolls always have another doll hidden inside of them, like how in this show, you can never trust the outward face of anybody because they might be a Skrull. So then Gravik strolls away after murdering Maria Hill, which I'm convinced he did to make Nick Fury suffer. Gaia is waiting for him, which is making us think that she lied to her dad about turning on Gravik in the last episode. And then again, there's no guarantee that this is actually Gaia, or that she was really the person who was talking to Talos in the first episode.
I don't trust anyone.
I'm also going to hold on to my theory here that Talos is the secret villain behind everything, even keeping his involvement hidden from his own daughter. But here, he arrests Fury to get him to safety, while the fake American activist is captured just like Gravik planned.
Ordinary dish soaps can leave invisible grease behind. Only Dawn Platinum removes 99% of grease.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, wait, what was that about again?
Well, one of the Skrulls is posing as an American who is part of an anti-Russian group, and then they're framing this guy for setting off the bomb in Russia, hoping that the Russians will blame the American government and kick off a war.
I don't know if that would happen, but gotcha.
And then we go to the infamous AI art opening credits. Now, in case you didn't know, the weird movements of these credits were created with an AI program to give them a weird, inhuman feeling. And in that respect, they work. We actually did a great video breaking down how the credits were made, where we brought on an animation producer and an artist to talk about the implications of this kind of work. It's a great video that we're very proud of, so please check it out when you have time. Then, on the getaway, Talos and Fury catch their breath, and Fury talks about his past. We knew from Captain Marvel that he grew up in Alabama, but here he talks about a long train trip with his mother where they traveled during segregation.
From that Alabama, we always had to ride in the colored car.
Now, Fury starts off the story kind of innocently, talking about the food.
We couldn't go in dining car, so we brought fried chicken, white bread, deviled eggs.
And then the yarn spins into a nice memory of a son and his mother telling each other stories, where Fury provides fun, personal details.
Me and Susie had a standing game of doctor. We've been playing behind Old Man Jackson's barn.
But Fury is actually using this scene to illustrate a point about spycraft, that omitting information is tantamount to admitting guilt. And then he uses this same tactic on Talos to find out information on the Skrulls. And the thing is, we've seen Fury use this same storytelling tactic before. In a monologue in Winter Soldier, he talked about how his grandfather was an elevator operator who protected his bag of money by keeping a loaded .45 in the same paper bag.
Every week some punk would say, "What's in the bag?" Eat your own. Bunch of crumpled ones and a loaded .22 Magnum.
And in The Winter Soldier, Fury tells the story of an elevator operator while they're in an elevator to make it seem like it's all part of the normal flow of conversation. And this is also part of the movie's ongoing use of elevators, bringing us deeper to show us hidden secrets underground, like Project Insight or Zola. And in this show, Fury shares this story about the truth on a train, which is interesting. Trains only travel one direction. They can't change course, and they're hard to slow down. Like how Fury's actions in 1997 set the Skrulls on a collision course with humanity. And Fury finally understands that collision course in this conversation.
We've been at war with each other since we could walk upright.
I also liked how Fury's southern accent started to seep out during this story.
The mere fact that I did that told her everything she needed to know.
Then Fury asks him about the destruction of Skrullos, the Skrull throne world in the comics. Now in the comics, it was destroyed by Galactus. Eventually, this led the Skrulls to believe in a religious prophecy that their god had set aside Earth for them to conquer, laying the foundation for the Secret Invasion comic crossover. But in the MCU, it worked out a little differently, as the Skrulls were introduced as a defeated refugee people who were being exterminated by the Kree. Talos says that after the destruction of Skrullos, some of them went to live in a colony founded by Emperor Doric. At least I think he says Doric.
And every Skrull that isn't in Emperor George's colony.
Hilarious accent. And Doric is the Emperor who laid the groundwork for the Secret Invasion in the comics. And then the big bomb, that there are already 1 million Skrulls on Earth who consider the planet to be their home.
Have you lost your reptilian-ass mind?
And I gotta say, I'm kind of Team Skrull with this one. I don't blame the Skrulls for making a home on Earth. And this also shows that Fury was getting kind of bad at his job. He never created a Skrull detection device or even monitored the Skrulls arriving on Earth.
Maybe the Skrulls came during the blip when Fury was gone.
Yeah, actually maybe, because it would have been easier to replace people when they just disappeared. But I think there would have been like 500,000 Skrulls arriving on Earth, because half of them would have been blipped away. Anyways, Talos does say he did this because...
What happens when the host disappears? Huh? Because you were gone.
So I guess your blip theory kind of makes sense.
Cha-ching, score 1 for Dark.
Good job, man. High five. Talos says that as soon as Fury returned, he went straight away to the space station. And we saw this in the post-credits scene from Far From Home, where Fury is on vacation in space surrounded by Skrulls. One thing though, I think this is the first time this was confirmed to be on Saber, which was the station orbiting Earth. I always assumed that Fury was off in deep space. Fury counters with,
"You knew how to get in touch with me, Talos,"
which we saw Talos doing in that Far From Home post-credit scene. And Fury drops the mic with,
"There is not enough room or tolerance on this planet for another species."
And I'm telling you, that Talos villain theory looking pretty good right now. And then Fury delivers the coffin of Maria Hill to her mother. So in the comics, Hill was actually running S.H.I.E.L.D. during Secret Invasion, while Fury gathered a team of people that he could trust to work outside of the system. Now the show has obviously copied some of those elements, but with Rhodey later taking the place of Hill as the establishment figure who pushes Fury out. The scene where Elizabeth Hill blames Fury for the death of her daughter reminded me a lot of this critical scene in Civil War where Alfred Woodard puts Tony Stark on a guilt trip for Sokovia.
He's dead, and I blame you.
In both this show and in Civil War, Fury and Tony doubt their own judgment and their own capabilities to handle this crisis. The difference between them is that in Civil War, Tony decides to cede control to the government, while Fury is forced to go off on his own. And then we get several news flashes where we see prominent people who will later be revealed to be the leaders of the Skrull ruling council, including the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the Secretary of NATO, and Christopher McDonald as a news host of a Fox News type of network. Good to finally see the shooter in the MCU.
Big trouble though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
What's a NATO secretary? Somebody who gets a NATO coffee?
Good question, Doug. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's an alliance of countries formed during the Cold War to prevent the Soviet Union from spreading. And to this day, they're still essentially an alliance of the West trying to stem Russian expansion. So, since this show is about a potential World War III between Russia and America, this guy could be key in de-escalating or escalating that conflict. This is also similar to the comics, where the Skrulls replace several world leaders and media personalities in addition to superheroes. Then Gravik attends his first Skrull Council meeting. And remember, last episode, Talos told us that he was recently removed from the Council and replaced by Gravik. Gravik makes the case that humans are not good enough for their own homeworld, between the constant wars, racism, and polluting the environment. Like all good villains, he sees himself as the good guy, fixing the Earth's problems by ruling over it.
You were made to be ruled.
Mostly, though, Gravik and the others hate Fury for casting them aside and abandoning his promise. Like I said, though, fair play. Fury's been at this for almost 30 years. There has to be a new planet out there somewhere. Gravik says,
"Unlike the last war each one of us around this table fought in, I'm not going to lose this one."
Which made me think about the Nazis. Part of the reason why the Nazis rose to power following World War I is because there was a lot of resentment among the German people after their loss in the Great War. Germany had the strongest army in the world, and not only did they lose, but they lost big, and they had to pay reparations to the Allies and disassembled their entire navy and military. Hitler tapped into this resentment and told his people that they would never be losers again, which did not work out well for him. And now we have Gravik, who is tapping into a similar resentment to rally young people to his cause. Like we pointed out last week, he is using typical terrorist tactics of recruiting disaffected youth to his cause. The council asks,
"And what happens if the Avengers return?"
Finally, actual confirmation that following Avengers Endgame, the Avengers aren't a thing anymore. We've seen various heroes putting their heads together, like at the end of Shang-Chi, but the Avengers have remained disassembled following Thanos' defeat, which, if I may, is pretty stupid. You would think that the ultimate lesson the heroes would learn after the portal scene is that they need to stay together as a fighting unit, so Bruce or somebody would have reassembled the team. But we're going to do a whole video about that soon, so subscribe, ring the bell to make sure you don't miss it. Gravik pulls off a coup d'etat on the council, and before Shirley walks out, she fills in some crucial Skrull backstory.
We did not end up homeless refugees because we were unwilling to wage war. We ended up homeless refugees because we were too willing.
In the comics, the Skrulls have always been warmongering villains, and it seems like they used to have that mentality in the MCU, conquering other races, until the Kree beat them into submission. And then we see Gravik's Avengers Contingency, a plan to gather the DNA of other races to replicate their abilities to create the Super Skrull.
Oh, what's a Super Skrull?
Okay, so in the comics, just like in the MCU, Skrulls cannot replicate superpowers. So the Skrulls, way back in Fantastic Four number 18, were doing genetic experiments to modify their own people. The first Super Skrull was named Kl'rt, and he had the powers of the Fantastic Four. In later years, there would be several Super Skrulls who became an elite strike force. The Skrull answered to Star Force, the Kree group that Carol belonged to in the first Captain Marvel movie. In fact, one of the Super Skrulls, Kriega, is played by this woman. So the machine that Gravik is building is going to be used to create Super Skrulls by using alien DNA. Again, much like the Secret Invasion comic book. In the comics, Skrulls had to undergo a religious ceremony and genetic modification to impersonate superpowered humans. Speaking of Skrulls hiding as superheroes, let's move on to Rhodey.
No way, he's a Skrull?
I think he might be. be, and we've got a video coming out tomorrow that's all about that. So when we saw Rhodes with the president and wearing an American flag pin, we assumed that he had some high-level post, like Secretary of such and such. But this episode confirms that he is still just a colonel. And even after telling Ross where to stick it, he still works for the government.
That's a court-martial.
Rhodey is answering to a counsel for Nick Fury's actions, which is similar to the hearing scene in Iron Man 2 when Don Cheadle's Rhodey was first introduced.
Didn't expect to see you here. Look, it's me. I'm here to deal with it. Let's move on.
And there was a more recent scene in Wakanda Forever, which was much more high profile. Now, I thought it would have been neat if one of these same actors would have reprised their roles here, but this hearing is much more small potatoes than the one in Black Panther 2. After all, the United States sent their Secretary of State, and in this show, they send an Air Force colonel. I also thought this line was interesting.
Slovakia rolls the dice at me one more time, I'm gonna put on the suit and carpet bomb it.
This means that Rhodey still has his War Machine suit. Now, I thought that maybe he gave up the hero's life to go into politics, so I'm betting that now he's a superhuman liaison to the president, a post that Vision served for a while in the comics. And then we finally get to see Rhodes and Fury have their first on-screen conversation in the MCU, where they also both acknowledge their shared race.
Men who look like us don't get promoted because of our daddies, no?
This is pretty great because Rhodey has been stuck in the role of black best friend for more than a decade. Who knows? Maybe in the next episode we'll find out literally anything about his person.
Our world. Regnus.
Life. Rhodes does offer some interesting details here. After he first guesses the Hydra is back, he says that he's known about the Skrulls for 15 years. 15 years ago in the current MCU would have been about 2009, shortly after Tony did this.
I am Iron Man.
So if the Skrulls landed around then, it would make sense if they replaced Rhodey right at that time, because he was close to the world's highest profile superhero. But again, video coming out about that soon. But there was one thing about this conversation that I thought was extremely silly.
Maybe we should call our friends.
So right here, they're talking about calling their friends with superpowers. And Fury's answer,
we get them in a fight with the Skrulls, and next thing you know, they find themselves duplicated and turned into terrorists.
This is outright ridiculous. So in the Secret Invasion comics, the Skrulls have learned how to duplicate a superhero's powers, which makes it pretty much impossible to tell if a hero is a Skrull. But in this show, they haven't done that yet. So Fury could easily ask the Hulk or Monica Rambeau or anyone else for help, because the Skrulls would not be able to successfully replicate their powers. This is just a line written into the show to stop us from asking that question.
No, wait, he says he doesn't want the heroes to get framed for a crime.
Yeah, so, well, you know what, if they were framed for a crime, he could just explain to everybody that shape-shifting aliens from space took the I understand now. Okay, so never mind. The whole reason Fury wants to keep it a secret is because he's trying to keep the presence of the Skrulls a secret on Earth. My bad, I apologize. You're great, high five. But then, these two world-class actors get to really chew through some text, and it is one of the best dialogue scenes in the MCU. They touch on the difficulties of black men getting ahead in their field.
Every ounce of power we wrestle from the vice grip of the mediocre Alexander Pierce's.
And of course, remember, Alexander Pierce was the Undersecretary of the World Security Council and secretly a leader of Hydra. When Fury talks about keeping the world safe, Rhodes invokes American exceptionalism. When Fury says he's trying to protect the world, Rhodes says the way to protect Earth is to protect America.
We protect the planet by protecting our seat at the table.
What's American exceptionalism?
Well, this is the idea that America is so exceptional that we have to be in charge of the world's security.
I missed him.
Now, Rhodes has always kind of been this way, a total team player. Remember, in Iron Man 3, he wore the Iron Patriot armor. Now, back in the day, his personal loyalty to Tony Stark superseded his obligations to his country. But with Tony gone, he's all the way in the bag for the government. And then, after Rhodey fires Nick, we see this sad old man retreat for a cry.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine, when you're not really fine.
Damn, man, this show, we're finally getting to see under the hood to see what makes this character tick. It is so good. And speaking of world-class actors, let's move on to Olivia Colman, who is channeling Dolores Umbridge in her torture scene.
Oh, you see, that wasn't so terribly difficult, was it?
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished.
Coleman is playing Sonya Farnsworth. Now, in our trailer breakdown months ago, I pointed this out, but I forgot to last week. She is the granddaughter of Jack Farnsworth, aka Union Jack, this guy who fought with Steve's Howling Commandos. Now, we've met descendants of the Howling Commandos before, like Peter Parker's principal, Trip from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Dum Dum Dugan is the grandfather of your mom. Sonya is so perfect in this scene. The fact that she's cheery and never stops smiling makes her even more terrifying. She's also in total control of the situation, 5 steps ahead of everyone, like Fury used to be.
That's what it used to be like.
Like, for instance, when she casually sends everybody out of the room to die. She knows they're going to buy her just a little bit of time she needs to escape. And now let's shift back to Gravik's Easter egg-filled master plan to create superpowered Skrulls. Gaia is our POV character here as she's trying to uncover his plans. Now, I'm not sure if this is because she's secretly working with her dad or if she just genuinely wants to find all this stuff out. The Skrulls have been collecting various pieces of aliens left behind on Earth. This one says Groot and includes the same information about him from his Guardians mugshot, his species Colossus, and that he's from Planet X. As for where a piece of Groot would have been recovered, my guess is Wakanda. The next one is a Frost Beast from Jotunheim, and I am glad we finally got this addressed. One of the gags from Thor the Dark World is that after the magic sky holes have closed, one of the Frost Beasts is still loose on Earth. Now, presumably, S.H.I.E.L.D. captured this beast during the mop-up operation we saw pieces of in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but this is still a pretty big loose end in the MCU. This one says Cull Obsidian, one of Thanos' Black Order who fought Wong, Tony, and Peter Parker. And remember, Wong cut off his arm, and that would be the piece of him that the Skrulls have collected. And we also see Extremis, the super weapon that Aldrich Killian developed in Iron Man 3. Remember, that weapon was unstable, but Tony Stark managed to stabilize it to save Pepper's life. This has been another big loose end in the MCU because Tony essentially created a weapon that could end all disease, and the MCU just never talked about it again. And notice that the origin for Extremis is listed as Terra, or C53, the same designation the planet is given in Captain Marvel and in Guardians of the Galaxy films. Now, what's interesting is that when you add these powers together, you get an approximation of the Super Skrull's abilities. Groot gives the powers to stretch. Extremis is like the Human Torch, Cull Obsidian has scaly skin like the Thing, and the Frost Beast is nothing like the Invisible Woman.
Oh wait, Loki's from Jotunheim and he can turn invisible.
Yeah, but that's because he learned that magic from his mom, who is a witch. And the guy who collects the samples, by the way, Brogan, is prominent in the Secret Invasion comics. She was the Skrull who impersonated Elektra, the first Skrull that the Avengers discovered. And God, that was such a cool reveal when it happened. So Gravik comes in to rescue his agent, casually placing this dude on a meat hook. Afterwards, they drive the agent out to the country, and well, you know...
And what? What happens when you drive somebody out to the country?
He goes to live on a farm with all his friends.
That's nice. I thought they shot him.
Yeah, actually they did. Full Adriana.
You just ruined it.
I cried for 3 days.
And we end by showing the guy is not happy with the death of a loyal soldier, making her wonder if she is going to be next. And whose side, guys, is she really on? Back to Fury, he gets an SUV out of mothballs in England. It's not the same make or model, but it is similar to the reinforced vehicle that he drove in Winter Soldier. But I'm betting that this one has absolutely no tech in it whatsoever, so he can keep his secret wife off the grid. After all, he did the same thing for Clint Barton.
Fury helped me set this up when I joined. Kept it off S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files, so I have to keep it that way.
God, what a cool reveal. Underrated movie. So this is a pretty big twist. The reveal of Nick's wife, Priscilla Fury. She has sort of been mentioned before as a coded spy term.
My wife kicked me out. Didn't know you were married.
Wait, Fury's married to a Skrull? Does he even know she's a Skrull?
Right, so first of all, like I said before, I'm pretty sure this is the same woman that he speaks to in the flashback here.
Welcome.
Thank you, Fury.
And when Fury pulls up to the house, his wife is casually making dinner while in her Skrull form. This could be because she's hiding her identity from him, but...
I don't think so.
We've seen that when Skrulls go undercover, they go deep undercover, even maintaining their human forms around each other. I think that when her husband comes home, she just chooses to look like whatever he finds most attractive. It'd be really funny if she was played by Tyra Banks.
Ooh, can you imagine?
And finally, I love the detail that when he enters their home, he has to put on his wedding ring. He wouldn't wear the ring in the outside world because letting people know that he's married is a way of showing weakness. But here, he lives a totally different life.
Out there. Not in here.
And by the way, everybody, don't forget that if you don't want secret agents to follow you and track all your information, then get Incogni. It is a great way to scrub your information off the internet and protect your privacy. But what did you think of this episode of Secret Invasion? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Insert your card when you're ready. I think he took it out just a little fast. Reinsert it and wait till it beeps. Oh,
Peace and wait for the beep.
There are two beeps. There's a beep, and then you're gonna wait for a beep. You hear the difference?
No.
Take it out and reinsert it.
Okay.
Let's review the math. Over 5.5 billion people have been vaccinated now.
I'm like, boom. You looking for this?
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy. So shape-shifting aliens known as
Skrulls
have invaded the Marvel Cinematic Universe, replacing characters we know and love by taking not only their skin, but their memories too. And we think that a very OG MCU character who's been around since day one could be one of these secret Skrulls. That is Colonel James Rhodes.
Rhodey?
We went back through the history of the MCU and found out that, holy hell, it makes perfect sense if Rhodey had been a Skrull this entire time. So we're going to present our evidence and also talk about the eerie fact that Rhodey was recast in 2010's Iron Man 2.
Surely that was just a coincidence.
Sure it was. Or maybe it wasn't, but yeah, it probably was. But we actually have a really fun theory about how recasting Don Cheadle in the role in 2010's Iron Man 2 could actually be canon in the MCU. I can't wait to talk to you about that just a little later in the video. So we started thinking that Rhodey could be a Skrull because of how he acted in this scene with Nick Fury. Rhodey is acting really weird, like not himself.
The reason we wrestled this power from mediocre men who don't look like us was not simply to turn around and hand it to mediocre men who do.
Now, there's been plenty of times in the MCU where Rhodey has been stern or blunt with Tony and other members of the team. But in this interaction with Fury, you can see Rhodey slightly smiling as if he's enjoying the confrontation and taking pleasure in firing Nick Fury. The Rhodey I know would never act this way.
It's not in his character.
But I could easily see a Skrull unable to hide their smile when getting to fire a man that they hate so much for his broken promises. And listen to how he talks about his security.
I know they're catching bullets first if I get shot at.
This just doesn't sound to me like something Rhodey would say. He's the type of guy that would jump in front of a bullet to save someone else's life. So I don't see him making light of something like that. Sounds to me more like a Skrull who is dismissive of human life. So I wanted to go back and compare this interaction between Fury and Rhodey to past interactions from other films. But here's the thing, there are no other interactions. This scene in Secret Invasion is the first time we've seen Rhodey and Fury share the screen. Sure, they were both at Tony's funeral and the Battle of Sokovia, but still, we've never seen them actually speak or interact with one another until now. So, for all we know, their relationship may have always been adversarial. Rhodey has always had trouble coloring outside the lines in his government role.
As he does not operate within any definable branch of government, Iron Man presents a potential threat to the security of both the nation and to her interests.
And by the way, that's another clue right there. Right at the top of this movie, Rhodey basically turns on Tony and says that the government should have the armor. I'll talk about why a little bit later though. The point is that Rhodey is a rule follower who collars inside the lines. Whereas on the other hand, Nick Fury has always had trouble collaring inside the lines.
I recognize the council has made a decision. But given that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it.
So, the stark difference in the way Rhodey and Fury conduct themselves while on the job could be an existing rift that we've just never seen. But I still think he's a Skrull. Rhodey being a Skrull would be an even bigger gut punch in the Everett Ross reveal in Episode 1. Now, whether Ross has recently been replaced by a Skrull or has been one the whole time is yet to be seen. Now, we've actually got a great video up on the channel dissecting how long Ross has been a Skrull, so be sure to check that one out. Anyways, Rhodey has been around since the beginning. He was there for 3 Thanos fights, the time heist, the death of Tony Stark. He participated in debates over the Sokovia Accords, the final battle with Ultron, and he was even there for this clip.
I am Iron Man.
Who's that guy? That's not Don Cheadle.
Well, remember, buddy, in the first Iron Man movie, Rhodey was played by Terrence Howard, not Don Cheadle, and Don Cheadle came in as Rhodey in Iron Man 2.
Oh yeah, the recasting thing.
Right, and we have a fun theory about how they could retcon this recasting into the MCU with a little help from our old friend Kevin.
I possess the most advanced entertainment algorithm in the world.
But first, let's go back and look at all the signs over the years that Rhodey has actually been a Skrull all along.
What? Or why were the Skrulls want to replace Rhodey years ago? Like even before he was a superhero?
Alright, well let's go through the history about what we really know about Colonel James Rhodes, aka War Machine, aka Iron Patriot, aka Rhodey. It's possible that Rhodey has been a Skrull since even before Iron Man 2. You see, there's a possibility that Rhodey might have been a Skrull the first moment we met him in Iron Man. Tony and Rhodey met in college when they were both attending MIT. Now, at that point, the Skrulls hadn't even arrived on Earth yet, so he couldn't have been a Skrull when he was in college. But Tony knew Rhodey from school, and that's when they became good friends. And maybe after college, while Tony was busy taking over as CEO for Stark Industries, and Rhodey was climbing the ranks in the military, they probably went a while without seeing each other. This would have been the perfect time for Rhodey to get swapped out by a Skrull. The Skrulls would see that Rhodes, an MIT graduate, would have a sterling career in the Air Force, so they would want to plant him in place for the long haul. But I think it's more likely that they would have replaced him to have an agent close to Tony Stark. Keep in mind that Rhodey was Tony's government liaison in the first movie.
As liaison to Stark Industries.
And at this point, Tony is the world's #1 weapons manufacturer, so of course the Skrulls would want to be close to him. Hell, Fury might have even planted Skrulls near Tony Tony, just like he planted Natasha.
I want you to meet Agent Romanoff.
Hi.
I'm a SHIELD Shadow. Once we knew you were ill, I was tasked to by Dr. Fury.
And between Iron Man 1 and 2 is when Tony Stark became an even more prominent figure, gaining the attention of top secret government agencies like S.H.I.E.L.D.
Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
In the opening of Iron Man 2, we saw Tony Stark having to testify before Congress on his Iron Man technology, and he's being pressured to hand it all over. We also see that other countries' militaries from around the world are trying to create their own version of the Iron Man suit, just not very well.
Wait a minute, I thought the Skrulls only like just now wanted to conquer the world.
That is true. So this is the first time we've actually seen that Skrulls want to take over humanity. But think about it. In this last episode, Promises, we see several Skrulls have already infiltrated like really high-level positions of government. The Secretary of NATO, the news media, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. This makes me think that the Skrulls were always kind of preparing for this eventuality. Otherwise, the Skrulls just would have assumed normal people with no power and been happy to live their lives. But why would they take over the face of such public, powerful figures unless they always had the contingency plan to take over humanity? And that's why I think the Skrulls might have been planting agents all the way back during the first Iron Man movie. So if the Skrulls are embarking on a mission to eventually take over the world, or at least to have the option to take over the world, it makes sense that they'd want to get close with Tony Stark and have access to his technology. Tony being a man who had developed the most advanced weapon systems the world had ever seen. Being close to Tony Stark would be a major asset for the Skrulls. Plus, he is the world's first superhero. If the Skrulls think that superheroes would eventually be an obstacle to their plans, then of course they would plant people close to the heroes. Years ago, Nando V Movies did a great video predicting that Rhodey was a Skrull, and I'm going to break down some of the points that he made. In Iron Man 2, we see Rhodey steal one of Tony's suits and hand it over to the government. But Nando made some pretty good points about this scene. One, what did Rhodey do with the suit between the time he took it and the next morning when he landed at the Air Force Base and handed it over? It should have only taken him about an hour to get from Tony's house to the military base. So what was he doing with the suit for all of those interim hours? Maybe he took it back to his Skrull base first so they could study the suit and gather any and all information needed to replicate suits of their own to help better prepare them for the upcoming war, or so they would gain the knowledge to disable Tony's armor in case the superheroes ever oppose their invasion. Another good point was that in Iron Man 3, Rhodey isn't able to use any of the Iron Man suits in this big final battle because they're all coded to work with Tony and Tony only. Now, this is likely a new feature Tony put in to make sure none of his suits could ever be stolen again. But what if the suits were always coded to only work with Tony, and Rhodey was able to bypass this by morphing into Tony Stark while he was inside the suit in Iron Man 2.
But person, if Rhodey's an evil Skrull guy, then why would he hand the Iron Man suit over to the government?
Because he wanted to use this as a gesture of good faith with the government to further advance his career and rank in the military. And another fun thing Nando points out is that this wouldn't be the first time that Rhodey, or more specifically War Machine, was used as an antagonist. In Iron Man 2, we see Rhodey's suit overridden with him still inside, and he attacks Iron Man. And then in Iron Man 3, we see the Iron Patriot suit get taken over and be worn by one of the members of Extremis.
That's not how the Mandarin works.
So the War Machine suit being occupied by an adversary has become a common occurrence in the MCU. Also, let's go back to Age of Ultron. Now, at the start of this movie, Rhodey is not a full-fledged Avenger. He's more like Tony's friend who works for the government and has his own Iron Man suit that's coded only to him. He even talks about some covert missions he's been on, like that sound like they're for the US government, to destabilize dictators in other countries.
So I take the tank, fly it right up to the general's palace, drop it at his feet. I'm like, boom, you looking for this?
But he's very comfortable with the team as they're all hanging out later on.
Are you even pulling? Are you on my team? Just represent, pull.
So at this point, the Skrulls are not able to replicate super abilities. So in other words, if the Skrulls wanted to infiltrate the Avengers, they couldn't pose as Steve Rogers. Well, maybe they could because they have advanced like strength and stuff like that and durability. They couldn't pose as Thor. They couldn't pose as Hulk. They could have posed as Black Widow, except she has a very particular skill set. And they definitely couldn't have posed as Hawkeye because, well, not your average person can do this. So the one member of they could have posed as Black Widow, except she has a very particular skill set, and they definitely couldn't have posed as Hawkeye because, well, not your average person can do this. So the one member of the Avengers that the Skrulls could have realistically impersonated at this
Zero sugar, zero artificial sweeteners, liquid IV, now it's sugar-free.
point was Rhodey. Rhodey has no superpowers, he's just got charm and an Iron Man suit that's coded only to him. And then something weird happens. Ultron attacks the team, right? And Rhodey gets injured. But look at this injury. Like, this guy wears an Iron Man suit. It never made any sense to me that Rhodey was not able to go join the other Avengers against Ultron. It seemed like a way just to keep, like, the core cast as the only heroes who were going off to fight Ultron, because frankly, the movie was a little crowded and they were introducing Vision and Scarlet Witch. But then, after what I presume is just a day or two, Rhodey comes in at the end to, like, help fight off the robots.
Yeah, but what's that got to do with him being a Skrull?
Well, here's the thing. So when Ultron became sentient, I think the Skrulls would have needed to have been notified immediately. After all, Ultron gained sentience from an Infinity Stone, and the Skrulls had previously worked with an Infinity Stone in the movie Captain Marvel. So I think that Rhodey disappearing for these 2 days had nothing to do with his injury, but actually was him reporting back to the Skrulls to debrief them on the Ultron situation. For example, if they thought that Earth was literally going to be destroyed by Ultron, then they would have left. Like, they didn't have to stick around. But instead, the council must have voted for Rhodey to go do everything that he could to help stop Ultron, and so he shows up during the final battle at the very last minute. And even in that battle, you can see him kind of like studying and scoping things out. Like when the Vision swoops in to save him, he says,
"Okay, what?"
And I'm telling you, this is why it makes perfect sense for Rhodey to be a Skrull. He is the person who is close to the Avengers with no abilities, who can study them and probe them for weakness. And those weaknesses would be exploited in Captain America Civil War.
Okay, so when do you think Rhodey could have been replaced?
Well, there's another moment that sticks out to me as the perfect opportunity to replace Rhodey with a Skrull, Civil War. In Civil War, we see Rhodey get hit by Vision's laser and he takes a nasty fall that honestly should have killed him. But supposedly, the fall only paralyzed him.
Probably looking at some form of paralysis.
But what if he did die? What if during Rhodey's operation in Civil War he died and a Skrull took his place? There would have been Skrull spies who had already infiltrated every level of the government and Avengers compound and used this opportunity to infiltrate the actual Avengers.
So then why is he wearing neck braces to walk?
Well, the Skrulls aren't stupid. They knew that it'd be a tough sell for Rhodey to have survived that fall, so they faked his paralysis. This would explain how Rhodey managed to bounce back from his injuries so seamlessly. I mean, after his fall, he pretty much couldn't walk, and after that, he used mechanized braces to get around. But now he doesn't even have braces on his legs, and he's walking up and down stairs, no problem. Sure, it's possible that with years of physical therapy, he's been able to regain the ability to walk, and it's also possible that he has new braces that he can wear underneath his pants. But it's also possible that this Rhodey, the Skrull Rhodey, never had those injuries to begin with and was faking all along.
Wait, so you're saying the real Rhodey might have died?
Maybe.
But they're doing the Armor Wars show or movie thing that supposedly happened sometime maybe.
Oh, that's right. So Rhodey is supposed to be getting a movie that's set up by the events of Secret Invasion. So maybe instead of dying, Rhodey's body was just taken by the Skrulls and stored in one of their holding chambers like we see here. Meaning that this Rhodey will wake up to a very different world. He won't know about Thanos' attack, the snap, or the death of his best friend. This could lay the groundwork for an awesome fish out of water type story. A soldier who's been held in captivity for the better part of a decade and who has woken up to a world that he no longer recognizes. And with Tony Stark now being out of the picture, Rhodey could feel that it's his responsibility to step in and prevent Tony's technology from falling into the wrong hands. He'd be in a position that's a lot like Captain America. He was put into deep sleep in the middle of a war, wakes up years later to find more wars have happened and the world is just as broken as it was before. Another possibility, though, is that Rhodey was replaced by a Skrull even before he took that fall. Vision is supposed to be infallible, and Tony is shocked when he recklessly hit Rhodey with his laser beam. But what if that wasn't Vision's fault?
I became distracted. I didn't think that was possible. Neither did I.
What if Rhodey was already a Skrull and purposefully moved in front of Vision's beam?
But why would he do that?
Simple, to escalate the war between our heroes. Perhaps the Skrulls realized how much of an obstacle the Avengers would be in their plans to take over the world.
Humans are not the cowering wretches we were promised.
Or even if the Skrulls don't want to take over, after Sokovia and all these other events, they see that the Avengers are unpredictable, they're loose cannons, so they want to reel them in. And so they played a key role in the orchestration of the Civil War between our heroes in hopes of breaking the Avengers apart
from the inside.
With the Avengers being broken and no longer trusting one another, that would set the stage perfectly for the Skrulls to begin to infiltrate the team and cause chaos. Now, if the real Rhodey was replaced in Civil War, that means the Skrull Rhodey was likely there for moments like this.
Why don't we just find baby Thanos,
and this.
I wasn't always like this.
Me either.
Now, I picked these two scenes because they both could be clues to Rhodey being a Skrull. While these scenes are humorous and heartfelt and seem like the real Rhodey, these can also be clues that he is an imposter.
You're an imposter!
Rhodey asking if they could just kill baby Thanos might come off as a logical time travel question, but this suggestion could be the ruthless nature of this particular Skrull shining through. I mean, think about it. He just suggested pulling piano wire around a baby's neck.
First of all, that's horrible.
It's Thanos.
This tactic seems a little barbaric for a guy like Rhodey, but not for a desperate and war-torn Skrull. And take this scene with Nebula. Nebula says,
I wasn't always like this.
And then Rhodey replies,
Me either.
Now, clearly, this is Nebula and Rhodey bonding over alterations made to their bodies. But what if Skrull Rhodey is really referring to something else? What if he's referring to not being in his original body, his Skrull body, just like Nebula is no longer in her original body after Thanos' many alterations?
They were replaced by my father as a method of torture.
He picked a pretty set.
But if Rhodey was replaced way back in Iron Man 2 or Civil War, that would mean that almost all of the crucial character development moments between Rhodey, Tony, and all the other Avengers were really with a Skrull.
Inconceivable!
Well, it wouldn't really be that hard to believe, though. I mean, Skrulls were trained as spies by the spy, Nick Fury, and it's a spy's job to flawlessly incorporate themselves into their assigned life. In order to get close to Tony, the Avengers, and advance military rank, this Skrull would have needed to play the long game as Rhodey.
Or if he's a Skrull, why is he always helping Iron Man and fighting bad guys and stuff?
Dude, it's in the Skrull's own self-interest to help Tony and the Avengers in their battles against baddies like Ultron and Thanos. The Skrulls are trying to take over the world, so the last thing they want is for Ultron to destroy the planet or for Thanos to wipe out half their people. So what does all this mean? Well, Secret Invasion could be the first time we meet the real Rhodey, a Rhodey who's been hooked up to one of these machines for decades, a Rhodey who has no knowledge of everything that's happened over the years.
Yeah, but I thought you said the replacement could be recent, because Rhodey was acting all weird.
Yes, okay, so Rhodey is acting really odd toward Fury in this episode, but that could be because the Skrull disguised as Rhodey is starting to show his true colors and abandon the act it's been putting on for all these years. Perhaps the Skrull is bursting at the seams to finally be able to walk around in its own skin. It's also possible that Skrull Rhodey is letting their guard down a little because they no longer view Fury as a threat.
I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in.
But with that being said, Doug here makes a good point. Rhodey acting so out of character makes it possible that the Skrull replacement has been more recent. But personally, I think it'd be such a waste for Rhodey to have been replaced between the last time we saw him in Falcon the Winter Soldier and when we meet him again in Secret Invasion. If they're going to reveal Rhodey as a Skrull, I want it to be revealed that he was a Skrull during key moments from the MCU, not just off-screen time between Disney Plus series. Characters being revealed as longtime Skrulls is what was so cool about the Skrulls in the Secret Invasion comics. When major heroes were revealed to be Skrulls, it was revealed that they'd been Skrulls for a long time. And then you get this totally new perspective when you go back and reread those comics, now knowing who was a Skrull all along. I want to be able to do that with the MCU. But now the question becomes, how do we explain Rhodey's relationship with Tony? I mean, look at the way Rhodey looks at Tony when he's dying in Endgame. That's the face of a man who's watching his best friend die. Now sure, it could all be part of an act. A Skrull in disguise can never let their guard down and must always stay in character. But it's also possible that this Skrull Rhodey has developed a true friendship with Tony over the years.
You mean like the Skrull caught feelings?
Yeah, pretty much. And by the way, this happens in the comics all the time. Like at one point, the Human Torch married Alicia Masters. That was the Thing's ex-girlfriend. But it was actually a Skrull posing as her. Even after this was revealed, Johnny Storm and the Skrull, Elijah, still had feelings for each other.
Say what?
But now I want to go back to what we were saying earlier about the Terrence Howard recasting in 2010. See, Secret Invasion does take place in 2025, and we hear Rhodey say here that he was briefed on the existence of Skrulls 15 years ago.
About 15 years ago, I was part of an eyes-only top-secret presentation.
Secret Invasion is taking place in 2025, so 15 years ago would be 2010, the same year Iron Man 2 came out, and the first time we meet Don Cheadle's Rhodey. Coincidence? I think not! But we have to remember that in universe, this Rhodey and this Rhodey are the same character and look no different. In other words, to Tony Stark and everyone else who knows Rhodey, he never had some drastic change in appearance. It's not like down in Tony's lab there's pictures of Rhodey that look like Terrence Howard. And it's not like they needed to throw in some line about Rhodey having plastic surgery to explain why he looks different. We, as the audience, are just meant to understand that a new actor is playing the role and that it's the exact same character. Typically, the only in-universe acknowledgement we'd get to a character being recast is a fun wink and a nod like this.
Didn't expect to see you here. Look, it's me. I'm here to deal with it. Let's move on.
This never happened to the other fella.
Now, in a cinematic universe like the MCU, we have seen recasts like Rhodey, Bruce Banner, Fandral, Cassie, and soon Thunderbolt Ross. But see, these are recasts that the characters themselves are not aware of. If in-universe Rhodey went from looking like Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle because he was replaced by a Skrull, then that Skrull would suck at shapeshifting.
So are you saying that Rhodey being informed about Skrulls at the same time he was recast was just a coincidence?
Well, buddy, like Commissioner Gordon says,
you're not allowed to believe in coincidence anymore.
So, hear me out. The characters themselves did not notice Rhodey to look any different when he was recast. But what if we did? What if we as an audience who exist on a different plane of reality were able to notice the exact moment Rhodey was replaced by a Skrull? Series like She-Hulk have introduced the concept of breaking the fourth wall and making the audience a character in the story.
Kevin,
It stands for Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnectivity Nexus.
Now, we did a video a while back discussing whether or not the MCU could be existing within a simulation run by the AI Kevin. So, what if, when Rhodey was replaced by a Skrull, there was a glitch in the Matrix? A glitch that the characters within the simulation can't see, but we as the audience can see.
This is Support Team Blue Zero, sending coordinates for a suspected Mandarin broadcast point of origin.
Copy. Stretch. Yes, that might be a bit of a stretch, but the number one reason that I think Rhodey is a Skrull is because we don't know anything about him. Where is he from? Who's his family? Does he have a wife? Does he have kids? What's his favorite toy? We have no idea. There has to be a reason why this information has never been revealed, and it can't just be because Marvel never gave the Black Best Friends any character development, right? Right, guys? Right? So, I want to hear from all you guys. Do you think Rhodey's a Skrull? And if so, how long has he been a Skrull? The whole time? Somewhere in between? Or did it happen very recently like post-Endgame? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time